With a moment of prayer. Eternal Father, loving God, creator of everything and grace everlasting, we ask you for your presence upon our gathering today. Please guide us to find a common good, a greater purpose, and always productive ways to bring glory to you. May we all be united in heart and mind this morning. We seek your guidance as we live with the daily challenges to our moral direction as a nation and assaults upon what we know to be right. Give us strength to protect the rights and freedoms of all people, and give us strength to do your will to help those who cannot help themselves. Please watch over this amazing nation, the unborn, our families, our children, and our community. God, we thank you for the fearless leadership in Governor Reynolds and Governor DeSantis and their hardworking staff. Please watch over them in their travels and give them the strength and fortitude to carry out their message of hope, faith, and future. Please open our hearts and our minds to their words today. We thank you for remembering this nation, and thank you for preserving the freedom we have every day to seek you in our life in prayer. In God's name we pray, amen. Now I would like to introduce General Eddie Newman, who will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. General Newman.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
John, is he off? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds.
Wow, this is a great turnout. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you so much. You are in for a treat this morning, let me tell you that. So thanks for being here. I want to thank Supervisor Dickinson and Brigadier General Newman for giving the pledge and the prayer this morning. We appreciate that very much. And it truly is just so encouraging to see so many Iowans who are politically engaged, who care deeply about this country and believe that there's a better way. I am so pleased to have the opportunity this morning to introduce and welcome to the great state of Iowa a good friend and a fellow Republican governor, Governor Ron DeSantis. So Ron and I were both elected governor for the first time in 2018. We both won hard-fought races in a year that really wasn't that good for Republicans, and we did so in states that were considered purple at the time. As new governors, we both had some pretty big plans for our states, but of course, neither one of us could have predicted what was about to come our way in the spring of 2020. So Ron and I had the opportunity to meet early in our tenure as governors, but really didn't get to the opportunity to know each other until the pandemic. And as you're all aware of, those were extremely challenging and uncertain times for everyone. With absolutely no playbook, we both focused on protecting the lives and livelihoods and the freedoms of our citizens. I certainly appreciated a call that I got from Ron one day when he asked me to participate on a Laura Ingraham panel that where she was highlighting red state trailblazers when it came to COVID policies. You know, on that call, we had the opportunity to talk about what was happening around the country, the lockdowns, keeping kids out of school, the mandates. We talked about really the similarities in the decisions that we made. We could both clearly see the harm that was happening to our kids, that lockdowns were absolutely not working, how we were really the only two states to get our kids back in the classroom, and we're one of the few states that that were open for business. We both knew what it felt like to have the media relentlessly attacking us. In fact, I would say probably there was no governor who was attacked more by the national media than Ron. But through it all, we all watched him hold his ground. He had the courage to stand up for what he believed was right, for what was best for the citizens and Florida's children. And truly, voters saw that and they responded. While this last election wasn't what we had hoped for nationally, Florida and Iowa had a big old red wave. So 4 years after winning a narrow victory, Ron led a Republican blowout. And not only did he win by 20 points, but Florida voters selected Republicans up and down the ticket. Sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? Yeah. So by golly, in Iowa, we bucked that national trend too. For the first time in 50 years, our entire federal delegation is led by Republicans. Yay, that's right. I love it. It gets better. Keep standing. We're going to give you some more great statistics. We beat two longtime liberals and got freedom-loving patriots, Brenna Bird and Robbie Smith. Where are you, Robbie? There you go. Across the finish line. 40 years. We gained historic majorities in the legislature, and I'm here to tell you we're rocking and rolling and we're getting things done. Promises made, promises kept. So this morning, Ron and I are going to talk about what led to that victory. I'm anxious to have you hear some of the things that he's working on in Florida. I'm anxious to have him talk a little bit about his new book, The Courage to Be Free. But before becoming governor of the Sunshine State, Ron was a member of Congress. He was a founding member of the Freedom Caucus who bucked special interest and did what was right for America. Before that, he served his country in the military. He's a father of 3 beautiful children, and perhaps his biggest claim to fame is he's the husband of Casey DeSantis. Please join me in giving a warm Iowa welcome to Governor DeSantis.
Good morning. I bring greetings from the free state of Florida. And it's so great to be here with America's governor, Kim Reynolds. And you know how I know her, and I know she's a great leader and all that. But in Florida, I have a unique catbird seat to what's going on in every other state, because most people from these states, we have people coming down to Florida. And when I talk to people in Florida from Illinois, a lot of them are very bitter and annoyed about what's going on with their politics. Some of them just to visit, some of them to actually uproot their lives and come to Florida. Minnesota, they were fleeing lockdowns to come to Sarasota and Naples and these places. But when I meet Iowans in Florida, they're happy. They love their state because it's well run. It's one of the best run states in the country. It's because you've got a great governor. It's because you've got a lot of great people in the legislature. And because of this wave, you now have a Republican attorney general and all this stuff. So things are very good here, and we're really excited to see the progress they're making in the legislative session. But, you know, I always tell my legislators, you watch Iowa, watch these, do not let them get ahead of us on any of this stuff. So we've got our legislature in session now, so buckle up. The next 60 days should be fun in Florida. So I'm proud to say this is the #1 best-selling nonfiction book in the country. And there's a lot of people that are very annoyed by that fact, but I think it's a testament to just the recognition that over the last 4 years, we have seen one of the biggest examples of the American people speaking about policy and about the proper vision for government. And it wasn't necessarily in elections. Yes, Kim wins big, I win big, and that's important. It was really people voting with their feet, because what we've seen is a great American exodus from states governed by leftist politicians imposing leftist ideology and causing their societies to decay, to crumble. And so people coming, you know, look, we've always been a place where people would come. I mean, it's accelerated in Florida, but there was a little logic to life. Maybe you work in New York, you kind of retire. Okay, better to be in Boca Raton. It's warmer, right, when you get older. And that happened for sure. But when you have people uprooting from California to come 3,000 miles to Florida, I can tell you, I was born and raised in Florida. I don't ever remember seeing a California license plate. We start seeing all these California license plates, and I'll tell you, a lot of our voters were spooked about seeing these California license. How are these people going to vote? Are they going to change our state? Well, it turned out that they were voting because of what Florida was doing. So we really served, as you had this exodus, we really served as the promised land. We're the fastest growing state in the country. We've led the nation in net in-migration the last 4 years, and we've had more wealth move into Florida over the last few years than has ever moved into a single state in all of American history over a certain time period. And that is a result of leadership. It's a result of vision. It's a result of standing up for what's right. As Kim mentioned, in 2018, I ran in a state that for a decade had been a 1% state. Governor's races, president races, it was a squeaker. You just had to figure out how to get over the hump. So we get in by 32,000 votes out of over 8 million votes cast. We had a 0.5 percentage point margin. And the advice I was getting at the time was, okay, it's a divided state, very close election, trim your sails. Don't rock the boat, you know, just get in there and kind of be a little passive. And I rejected that advice. My view was, I may have received 50% of the vote, but I earned 100% of the executive power, and I intend to use that to be able to advance the best interests of the people of Florida and to fulfill my campaign promises. Because as Alexander Hamilton said, energy in the executive is the leading characteristic of good government. So we were mindful of that. I also made a decision. I am not doing polls to tell me what to do. And so I've not looked at a single poll since I've been governor. And the reason is, first of all, I can poll this room, get a result, change the wording of the question, and I would get a different result. So a lot of times how you ask a question. But second of all, the static analysis of opinion is not what a leader should care about. What a leader will do is not be captive to polls, but to set a vision and shift public opinion and get people to support what you're doing. And that was our approach in Florida. We also understood that I could be the best decision maker as an executive in the world, but if I don't have people in the administration who believe in the vision and are going to put the people's business before their own, then none of this stuff ends up getting done. So we made very clear, people working in the administration, you know, you're not going to be leaking, you're not going to be doing other stuff. If you have any other agenda but doing the business of the people of Florida, pack your bags right now. And we did that. And the one thing I could say, if you talk to Floridians, there's no drama in our administration. There's no palace intrigue. They basically just sit back and say, okay, what's the governor going to do next? And we roll out and we execute and we do things and we get things done. And in the process, we beat the left day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. And I think part of what that was, we said, we're going to be on offense on all these different things. I think some of these Republicans, they just kind of sit back. They let the left define the terms of the debate. They let the media define the terms of the debate. And then they end up just sitting there defensive. And it's like trying to work your way out of a wet paper bag. We weren't doing that. And here's the thing. A lot of elected officials, they don't want to have to make decisions. Why? Every decision you make, some people will like and some people won't. That's just the nature of it. So if you can wait for these things to bubble up before you get involved, then maybe you don't upset as many people. But that's not leadership. So we said we are going to go on offense. I'm going to find issues. I'm not just going to sit back and wait for it to come to me. And I sat at my desk the first day as governor. I looked around the office and I said, I don't know what SOB is going to succeed me in this office, but I can tell you this. They are not going to have very much to do because I'm taking all the meat off the bone there is, and I'm going to get all this done. And the result was, having said we're going to lead by conviction, we're not going to follow polls, we're not going to let the media define the terms of the debate, we went from winning by 32,000 votes in 2018 to winning by over 1.5 million votes in 2022. We had the largest, highest percentage of the vote that any Republican governor candidate has ever received in the history of the state of Florida. Our margin of victory of 1.5 million was almost twice the previous record in a governor's race. We won 62% of the Hispanic vote in the state of Florida, and we did that not by appealing based on ethnic, but by treating everybody as Americans who share the same values. That's how you win. We won 62 of 67 counties, including Miami-Dade County, which is our biggest county, urban county, 2.8 million people, 70% Latino. Hillary Clinton won it in 2016 in the presidential election by 30 points, and we won it in 2022 by double digits. And so we were shifting people in our direction because they were responding to leadership. And why were they doing that? I mean, part of it, Kim mentioned, she had to make tough decisions in Iowa that were the right decisions, but they were universally condemned by the left, by the legacy media, and by entrenched bureaucrats like Fauci when it came to COVID. And I'm just proud to say that when, during COVID, the world lost its mind, when common sense suddenly became an uncommon virtue, the state of Florida stood as a refuge of sanity. We were a citadel of freedom for people all over this country and even around the world that would come. We refused to let our state descend into some type of Faucian dystopia where people's livelihoods were destroyed and their freedoms were curtailed. No, we chose freedom over Fauciism, just like Iowa, and we were right and they were wrong. I think one of the reasons Kim and myself and some other governors got a lot of heat was because people like Fauci did not want a control group. They were saying lockdown indefinite. They were saying force, all these bad things. And if you have Iowa and Florida doing a different direct way, then people would be able to look and they would be able to evaluate how did that work out. And so we know now today the elites were wrong about lockdowns. They were wrong about forced masking. They were wrong about closing schools. They were wrong about denying natural immunity. They were wrong about the efficacy of mRNA shots, and they were wrong, and indeed they lied about the lab leak. They said it was natural. We know it came from that lab. And I think we need some accountability here. Fauci needs to be held accountable. All these agencies, the CCP. But here's the thing, even though they were wrong about all that, even when the data was coming in showing they were wrong, they doubled down on a lot of these policies. They became more coercive about the vax after you had the Delta wave, when it was clear the vax wasn't working to stop the spread, when they said if you take it, you won't get COVID. And so I'm proud to say, Florida, we stood as a roadblock to what they were trying to do. We, very early on, banned any COVID shot mandates for school children and university students. We banned vaccine passports in the state of Florida. And we actually called a special session to protect our workers, because nobody should have to choose between a job they need and a shot they don't want. And they are still clinging to this stuff today. They are trying to keep Djokovic, the great tennis player, out of our country because of the shot. They say if you come in on an airplane, you can't do it. So I wrote Joe Biden a letter, and I said, please stop with this anti-scientific nonsense. Drop this mandate. We're one of the only countries in the world that does this. It's COVID theater. It is not based on science. It's not conducive to freedom. But what I said in the letter was, you know, I read your order, you should repeal it, but if you don't, it may be the case that people can come in by boat. I'm not sure your order covered that. Can you give us some? So I have said, if Djokovic wants to meet us in the Bahamas, we'll get him over here by boat, get him to the state of Florida so he can compete. So the COVID was a big reason why states like Iowa have done well, Florida, but also just the way we're managed. And Kim and the legislature do a great job. Here in Florida, we actually have millions of more people in our state than New York State does. New York's budget is twice the size of the budget of the state of Florida. And yet, we have better roads, better services, higher performing K through 12 schools. Where is all this money going? Why are they taxing people? And just, well, yeah, exactly. And so in Florida, we have the second lowest per capita tax burden in the country and the second lowest per capita debt burden in the country. And I know Kim is working to drive her taxes down. We have no income tax. You guys should try to get there. If you can get there, you'll be happy with no state income tax. You'll do it. You'll do it. We also, Kim and I, and also other Republican governors, we've stood over the last few years for law and order. And we've seen that break down all across the country. You saw movements to defund police. You saw the worst rioting this country has seen in decades. And I can tell you, when I started seeing that in Minneapolis, these other places, I immediately activated the Florida National Guard. We deployed state law enforcement resources all around the state, and we told people, you will not burn down cities in the state of Florida. And guess what? They didn't get to burn down cities in the state of Florida. We also signed legislation prohibiting local governments from defunding the police. I don't want any city council can have 3 yahoos do something stupid. We're not going to put our citizens at risk. So we're putting the money back in. We also did legislation making sure that people who riot or loot or engage in mob violence aren't treated in Florida like they do in Portland. You get arrested, they take your mugshot, slap you on the wrist, put you right back on the street to do it again. No, in Florida, you're not getting a slap on the wrist. You're getting the inside of a jail cell because we're holding you accountable. And I must report that our anti-rioting legislation was actually condemned by the United Nations, which I view as a badge of honor. I must be doing something right. Part of the reason crime is out of control in some of these cities is because you have prosecutors elected with huge contributions from people like George Soros, and they get elected pursuing an ideological left agenda. They say they don't think some of these laws are just. They don't think our system's just. So they take it upon themselves to pick and choose which laws they will enforce. They let criminals roam the streets. You can get mugged in LA now and they probably aren't going to prosecute the guy because you have this Soros prosecutor. Prosecutors do not have the right to nullify the law. If you don't like a law as a prosecutor, the appropriate response is to resign your office, run for the legislature, and then try to change the law. But you cannot be a law unto yourself. And I'm proud to say, I put the word out in Florida about this. We had a fellow funded by Soros in Tampa, said he wasn't going to enforce certain laws, so I removed him from his post. He is gone. We also very much in Florida believe in the importance of strong immigration laws and strong borders. And you see what's happening in our country with the fentanyl pouring in record numbers, and we had 110,000 overdoses. The majority were opioids. Mothers that I have to console in Florida that lose a child because of what's going on at the border is a disgrace that this is happening. And here's the thing, when they lace fentanyl in this stuff, these are kids, teenagers, early 20s, they may have made a decision that wasn't the best decision, but they had no idea what they were getting, and it could all be over. And we see that, and Biden doesn't care. He laughed at that mother. Did you see that? He laughed at that mother who lost a child because of fentanyl. We have criminal aliens pouring across the border. They have people, even DHS, Biden's own agency, says there are people on the terrorist watch list that are coming across the country, are coming into our country. How is that discharging your oath of office and keeping the country safe? It's not. I'm happy to say in Florida, they used to say you can't be strong on immigration in Florida because we have a large Hispanic population. I'll tell you what we did, but before I do, I can tell you the people that supported me the most on being tough on immigration in Florida were Hispanics. They want the law enforced. So when I became governor, we finally banned sanctuary cities in the state of Florida. We recently sued Biden over his catch and release policy, and guess what? This week, a federal judge in the Florida Panhandle ruled that his catch and release policy is illegal and unconstitutional. So they're going to have to change something. We focus a lot on the southern border, and understandably in Florida, we actually have to deal with boats coming in from Haiti and Cuba. Castro regime sends people. The Coast Guard does actually a good job, but Biden won't give them enough resources. So I activated all our assets in the state. We've had people helping the Coast Guard, and in the last few months, we've been able to stop and repatriate 11,000 illegal aliens back to their homes. And because I'm sick of elites imposing their vision on open borders on you and on us, with them not having to face the consequences of it, so we thought it was worth it to send 50 illegals to Martha's Vineyard. They said they were a sanctuary city. They claimed that nobody was illegal and all are welcome, but you know what they did? They deported them the next day. They called out the army to deport just 50 of them. Just think what's going on at the border with our border towns. And look, we do need a border wall across the southern border. And all I can say, because I think we could be assistance in Florida. So we had a big hurricane that came through here. Some of you told me you have property in Southwest Florida. I mean, it was a big, big one, almost a Category 5. It did immense damage, including it knocked out a bridge to Pine Island, and it knocked out the Sanibel Causeway, severed it in 3 different areas. And so those residents were basically stuck. They were being told by the local authorities it's going to take 6 months before we can get the transport going back to there. Now, these were not state bridges or causeways, but they came to me and they said, Governor, you got to help. Our islands will die. I was like, all right, I'll do it. So I got my folks together. I said, listen, I am sick of bureaucracy. I am sick of red tape. I don't want this to take forever. I want you guys to go, and I want you to fix these bridges. And so 3 days later, we were able to reopen the Pine Island Bridge. And probably wouldn't have happened with California's government or New York's government, I'm just saying. But all I can say is I will send my Florida people who built those bridges in record time, I'll send them to the southern border to do the wall. Just put me in, Coach. Come on, Joe. Let us get it done. We'll do it. We're also proud. So if we were here 20, 25 years ago and we talked about election integrity in Florida, everyone would be laughing in this audience because we had some rough patches, particularly the 2000 election. But I'm happy to say, since I've been governor, we have banned ballot harvesting in the state of Florida. We've banned Zuckerbucks in the state of Florida. No mass mailing of ballots to people unsolicited. You have to have voter ID. All those things are really, really great. And the result is both 2020 and 2022, Florida, even though we have millions and millions of people voting, we reported the results and got to 99% as faster than any state in the country. And that's the way it should be. It shouldn't take you 2 or 3 weeks to count the votes. We're also leading on ensuring that our school system is focusing on educating our kids, not indoctrinating our kids. And that includes our universities. And these universities are funded by our tax dollars. They don't get to just do whatever they want. And they are trying, if they're trying to impose ideology, if they're trying to promote political activism and quote-unquote social justice, that is not the mission that we want for our tax-funded universities. We believe universities are about the pursuit of truth, academic rigor, and giving students the foundation so they can think for themselves and be citizens of our republic. So we are working to bring higher ed reforms. Already in Florida, a bill I signed last year, all tenured professors must undergo review every 5 years and can be let go if they're performing poorly. We had a small liberal arts college in Sarasota called New College, and it was poor performing, low enrollment, and it was supposed to be the top honors college in Florida. In Florida statutes, it was supposed to be this, and it clearly wasn't. So I appointed 6 conservative trustees. They came in, they fired the president, they hired a conservative president, they eliminated the DEI bureaucracies, and they put out a mission statement saying New College is going to be the top classical liberal arts college in the country, similar to Hillsdale College, but our own public liberal arts. And also, university-wide, our whole system, the legislature is working on, we're going to sign, we're eliminating all of the DEI bureaucracies. It's discriminatory, it's wrong, a lot of it violates civil rights laws, so we're not doing that. And then in K through 12, we've done things like eliminate critical race theory from our K through 12 schools. We're not going to teach our kids to hate our country or to hate each other. No, we're going to teach and actually give them the tools to know what it means to be an American. I think it's important as you fight CRT, do it, but also tell people what you're for. What do you think should be in the schools? And so we've done a new emphasis on American civics in the state of Florida. We want people to know what it means to be an American. What are the principles that our country was founded on? Why have so many people fought and died to preserve the American way of life? And in order to do that, you don't just have to have good standards, you got to have teachers that believe and understand this. So we created a civics boot camp for teachers. Great curriculum, they get everything. We give them a $3,000 bonus if they go through it, and I'll tell you, it's working, and we're going to continue to do it. We've also, though, I think we're the only state in the country that does this. We earmark one day a year, November 10th, for students to learn about the evils of communist governments and the victims of communist regimes throughout history. We got to tell the truth about Marxism, Leninism. When I do education stuff, I got to look through it, of course, through the eyes of a governor, but I also look through it through the eyes of a dad. And we have a 6, a 4, and a 2-year-old at home. And we're very sensitive to what parents are facing in terms of the different influences that are trying to be imposed on our children. It is wrong to tell a second grader that they were born in the wrong body. It is wrong to have gender ideology imposed in our schools. And in Florida, we don't let it happen. We have fought the fight, and we're going to do more. Just let our kids be kids. Stop using an agenda. Now, I appreciate that the folks in this audience agreed with that, but I can tell you not everyone did. And not just the left, not just the media, but the 800-pound gorilla of Florida politics came out and fought us when we were trying to protect kids from the gender ideology. Disney World is our most famous company. They have a massive footprint, and they opposed the bill, which a lot of people said when they opposed the bill's over. There's no way the governor is going to be able to withstand Disney, because they've gotten everything they've wanted for 60 years. And that's what was the predictions. And you know what? I just thought about that and I said, we run the state of Florida. We don't subcontract out leadership to a woke company based in California in the state of Florida. We're signing the bill. And I don't care what Disney says. But you know, then after we signed it, they said, you know, we're gonna make sure that we see it's repealed, they're challenged in court and all this other stuff. And look, I think these companies, woke companies, are really not doing what's in the best interest of their shareholders. They probably shouldn't be doing it. Nevertheless, from a first, they can say what they want. The problem is they had not, I didn't give it to them, it was 60 years ago, the most obscene subsidies that any company has ever had in the history of our state. They had their own government that they controlled in Central Florida. 44 square mile fiefdom, no transparency, no accountability. They basically did what they want. They were exempt from laws that other companies and individuals had to follow, major tax breaks and all this stuff. So we were in a situation, they're indulging in woke activism, they're opposing parents' rights in Florida, and they're saying that they want sexuality in the programming for the young kids. And we were in a position because of that ancient arrangement where Floridians were subsidizing their activism. And so I said, not on my watch. That's not going to happen. So we took action, and we really did the unthinkable. And now, because I've signed legislation recently, Disney no longer controls its own government in the state of Florida. There's a new sheriff in town, and there's going to be a new era of accountability and fairness, and they are going to pay their fair share of taxes. We've also had to stand up. It's sad that we're even having to do this, but we've had to stand up to protect the integrity of women's sports in Florida. And we were able to sign legislation to say that our girls and our women athletes have a right to compete with integrity and fairness. And we've made that happen. And it's really sad that we have to even talk, but we've had to take action to stop taking these minors and giving them puberty blockers and sex change operations. Our children are not guinea pigs for medical experimentation. We don't want people making money off mutilating them in ways that are irreversible. And I know Iowa's working on this too. We went unilaterally through our medical board, and so now in Florida, if a physician does that, they lose their medical license in the state of Florida. And we're going to do more in the legislature to make sure. But people say, like, why is this happening? Because I think even 10 years ago, we weren't really talking about any of this stuff. And I think it's all because of the woke mind virus. It is warping people. It's infecting medical practice. It's infecting all these other areas. And so one of the things I say in Florida, yes, free state of Florida, you could come, no, the mandates and all that we didn't do. And that's important. Important to have low taxes, important to keep government in its proper lane. But because woke ideology has infected so many institutions, if you really want to protect the freedom of your folks, you got to be willing to defend them against the left imposing their pathologies on your people in any of these institutions. So we've got to fight if we see it in medicine or the universities or the corporations. You can't just say, let it go, because then we're going to be living under an oppressive wokeocracy, and we can't that happen. So we say very clearly in the state of Florida, we will fight the woke in the legislature. We will fight the woke in education. We will fight the woke in the businesses. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Our state is where woke goes to die. And part of the reason I think we have to be very clear-eyed about this is because you see a concerted effort to impose an ideological agenda through corporate America. When you see things like ESG, understand all that is cover from being able to leverage their economic power to impose ideology. And whether it's they're against fossil fuels, whether they're against the Second Amendment, whether they're against agriculture, all they're doing is trying to do through corporate means what they could never achieve through the ballot box. We elect people to make these decisions. They're trying to do an end run around that process by colluding together and imposing it with no accountability. So in Florida, we are working to nix ESG in the bud. We are not going to sit there and let them discriminate against energy, against Second Amendment, and we're even going to provide protections against woke banking so that you as an individual Floridian can't be discriminated against because you're conservative or you're a Christian. You have a right to participate in our financial system. I mean, a lot of these banks got bailed out and now they're discriminating. Give me a break. We also understand that there's threats posed internationally, particularly by the Chinese Communist Party. And there is an effort now for the CCP to engage in land grabs of farmland and other critical lands. So in the state of Florida, we're acting in this legislative session. We're going to prohibit land buys from any CCP-linked business in our state. No farmland, no land, no military, no critical infrastructure, nothing. So we have more to talk about. I'm going to sit down and be able to discuss with Kim. But I just want to say thank you for coming out. Thanks for your interest in this book. You can go to DeSantisBook.com if you want to. Anyone else out there wants to buy one. I can tell you, I think that we sold more in our first week than both Hillary, Obama, and Biden did in their first week. Not bad, right?
Well, I can tell you, I've hung around with Ron for just a little bit, and I'm here to tell you he is just getting warmed up. So this guy is a man on a mission, and you got to hear a lot of the things he's working on. You know, as governors, we're so competitive. I wanted to start writing down, yes, we've done that. Yes, we've done that. It's on my agenda. We're working on that. Our legislature just passed blocking gender reassignment and puberty blockers, so that's on its way to my desk. Thank you, legislature, for getting that done. We're also working on parental rights, but... I had in my State of the State earlier this week, we had a young woman, Chloe Cole. They put her on puberty blockers when she was 13. Then they did a double mastectomy on her. And now she's an activist saying that was wrong. Right. That was wrong. Here's the thing. These you go through a lot in your teenage years. I mean, and most of the dysphoria resolves itself by the time they become adults anyways. Why would you take off their body parts? It is wrong, and Iowa's right to take a stand against it, and Florida's right to take a stand against it. Yeah, and you started. You just went through the medical institution, so you started. You kind of set the marker for us to do it. So welcome to Iowa, though. I think this is your first time in Iowa, am I correct? So I was down in Florida a couple weeks ago. Ron welcomed me with 85-degree weather and sunshine. So I thought it was only fair that we welcome him with a little snow and some cold weather so we could get him acclimated. But and congratulations on your book, #1 in the New York Times, which that has just got to drive him crazy, right? Crazy. So you talked about the election and the huge wins that you had in the Republican Party down in Florida. Talk a little bit about how did you drive that? Give them a little bit more details about how you drove it, what it means, how it can be a blueprint for other states as we head into the next election cycle. And then it's a mandate. So how are you kind of alluded to how you're using it, but give us a little bit more detail on that.
So if you look at the results from our election in 2022, we did better with every single demographic except affluent, woke, left Democrats. That's the only one. But I think that's instructive because a lot of what we're doing, they don't like. The media basically agrees with them, so they get mad at us. But the vast majority of people, even not Republicans, a lot of these are blue-collar people. They're independents. Maybe their parents were Democrats, so they are. And they're looking at this, and they're seeing a difference between insanity and common sense. And whether that was making sure kids could be in school, whether it's making sure that the curriculum is age appropriate. We're having a thing. I just did a thing the other day. The media, because we have curriculum transparency in Florida. Parents have a right to know what's being done in the classroom. They know the books, and the books have to be appropriate and meet the standards. The media tries to say, Florida's banning books. There's no books on the shelves. Florida doesn't want you to read all this. And it's obviously a lie. But what we did, and first of all, a school can only have 0.00001% of the books that are available. You, by definition, are curating what's in your school versus what's not in your school. So you're making decisions. If you're making a decision to have a book that has hardcore pornography for a 5th or 6th grader, that's a bad decision, okay? That's a decision that is not acceptable in the state of Florida. So what we did was we did a video where we showed all the different stuff that parents have objected to. The news stations had to cut their feed because it was too graphic. They were not allowed to put it on the air. If you're not allowed to put it on the air, why are we showing it to 5th graders? We should not be doing that. But that's an example of, as parents, we did very well with single mothers, and Republicans typically don't do as well. But the reason is because we were focusing on all these issues that had an impact on their lives and on their kids' well-being. And this is very personal to a lot of people. Obviously, we fought the Dems on the lockdowns and other stuff as well. So there's a lot of things that we did. But I just think we're in a political situation where you have the Democrat Party driven by this woke agenda, which, look, in Berkeley, that's popular in Berkeley, right? And there's certain little enclaves in our country that may be popular, but it's not popular with the vast majority of people. And I think it showed from what we showed in Florida is not only can you have a good agenda, deliver, you can make big inroads with the electorate. And that's exactly what we did. I mean, to go from 32,000 to 1.5 million margin, that doesn't happen by accident.
I appreciate you calling them pornographic books because they are, and they shouldn't be in the libraries. I got the opportunity to read an excerpt from one of the books, too, on an interview that I did with one of our stations, and they were very uncomfortable. I said, do you want me to keep reading? And he, as he was turning red and sweating, he said yes, and they had to issue a warning before they even talked about it on the news.
And I don't understand, because when I was a kid, my school seemed to be normal to me. I mean, maybe I just didn't have context, but there is an effort to sexualize these young kids, and it is wrong, and we've got to stand up against it, and we can't allow it to win the day. And you're doing it in Iowa, we're doing it in Florida, but that needs to be all across the country.
But, we're doing both sides of it. Talk a little bit about, I think this is in a part of your legislative program this year, your Teachers' Bill of Rights bill, and also your expanding school choice as well. So you're doing that part of the equation as well. Can you talk a little bit about that? Give us some details.
So I've actually, and we have a lot of school choice in Florida. It's great, but the vast majority of people still go to their school district in the public school. So what we've done, we did over $2 billion in increases for teacher salaries, but we created a special categorical in the budget because in Florida, you send the education down to the districts, they divvy it up. So you can say you're doing more for education. The school unions get in there, they get their hands on it, it ends up going to administration, bureaucracy. So we do that, and every year we say the only thing this pot of money can be used for is increasing teacher salaries. And so we did $800 million last year. We're going to do $1 billion this year. No money to the union, though, none.
Or administration, right?
Or administration,
we
yes.
cut out an administration as well,
Yeah.
only to the teachers, right?
And so the Teachers' Bill of Rights is saying, these teachers have a right to be in a safe classroom too. You have some students that discipline, and the teacher feels if they discipline and keep order, then they end up being under the gun, because you have some of these programs where they want to always excuse the students' misbehavior and act like somebody trying to ensure discipline is the bad guy. And we're saying no. Everybody should have first of all, the students have the right to be in an orderly classroom, but the teacher has a right to have order in the classroom. And so we've provided protections there. We've also provided protections because what happens is we have certain state laws, like no critical race theory. You may have a activist school board in a liberal county that's saying, no, you need to do it, or an activist principal. So what we said is you have complete protection. If you're following state law, there's nothing that they can do to you. So we're not letting them do an unrun around, because a lot of the teachers don't want to do this gender ideology and things like that, but some of the activists pressure them to do it. So everybody do it. And then what we're doing is saying, you should not be pressured to join the school union. What they do, they make them sign these authorization forms for the automatic deduction of dues. They don't even say how much money is being taken out. So what we're doing is paycheck protection. No automatic deduction for teacher union dues. You write out the check if you want to do it. That's fine. But this is going to reduce the pressure to do it, and I think people are going to make decisions that are less colored by that. And at the end of the day, and then if the union doesn't have 60% in the given county of the available membership, they get decertified in the state of Florida. So I think that's a really good way to go.
It is. It works. We did that in 2017, I think, when we finally got the majority in both the House and the Senate. That was one of the first big bills we pushed across the finish line, was collective bargaining reform. We put taxpayers at the table, and we let local governments have the opportunity to weigh in and make the decisions. But I'm going to shift gears here just a little bit. So you've got a lot going on in Florida, and it's just, we love it. We love watching you lead. But you also got a lot going on at home. So you and Casey are parents to 3 kids. They're just beautiful kids, one of which was born, I think, during your first term as governor. Is that correct? And so over the last 4 years, in addition to that, Casey has beat back cancer. So just talk a little bit about what it's like for you and your family over these past few years. I think it's the first time there's been kids in the mansion, if I remember that. So talk a little bit about that, and just Casey's, she's cancer-free right now, so we could praise God for that.
Oh, yeah, no. And we do. So, it's interesting. A lot of people didn't know this when we were doing the tussle over the parents' rights in education, but we actually, Casey and I got married at Disney World, okay? It wasn't my idea. I was a junior officer in the Navy. We started dating. Yeah, I got sent to Coronado, then Iraq, and so I was gone. But I said, as soon as I get back from Iraq, I'm proposing to her. We did. We got engaged. I said, look, the wedding, it's all you. You just do what you want. And her parents apparently were very big Disney enthusiasts, had taken their kids to the parks over the years from Ohio, and then liked the program, whatever. So they suggested it. So she came to me and said, what do you think about Disney World? I'm like, Disney World for what? And she's like, for the wedding. And I'm like, what, in Cinderella's castle? How does that work? No, they have a wedding venue. It's honestly a very nice wedding venue. So I said, listen, I said you do whatever you want, but I just have to put my foot down on one thing. No Mickey or Donald Duck in our wedding. It needs to be traditional, and it was. And my uncle's a priest, so I wheeled him in, and he did it and everything. So we did. But it's it just shows you how strange life can be. We're newlyweds leaving there 13, 14 years ago. Who would have thought that I would end up toe-to-toe with them, in the political arena? But you do. So we get elected in 2018. We had Madison and Mason. She was 2, he was 9 months. And then we had Mamie at the end of March of 2020, which COVID was that was peak hysteria. I'm literally in the hospital on the phone with the president, going back to the, it was really, really crazy. So we did that, and she's done a lot for the state. She's got great initiatives, all that. And it's not easy with the 3 kids. Then she got diagnosed with breast cancer in October of 2021, and she went through all of that, and really it was tough, but she handled it remarkably. And on my second inauguration day, we did a picture. So 4 years ago, I was at the desk. I had Madison, who was 2, Casey standing next to me, holding Mason, who's 9 months. So we recreated the photo. Madison 6 on the lap. Mamie, who wasn't even around, 2, is now on the other one. Casey sitting there holding Mason. We did it, and then we created frames side by side. So you see 2019, 2023. And after all she went through, and I'm not just saying this because I'm the husband, you guys look yourself. she's prettier in 2023 than she was in 29. I don't know how you pull that off, but I can just tell you I'm a lucky guy. But I think just from a policy perspective, it's not that people that her kids are older or whatever, but it's like we're very sensitive to being able to raise kids, and we want our state to be a family-friendly state. And that just colors everything that we're doing from a family perspective. And we put a lot of emphasis on it. We try to take them whenever we can. If we actually were just with them in Texas. They got to go to the Houston Rodeo and do some pretty neat things. So that's just kind of how the way we roll. But when people see me out there or her out there, they can know that the family is very, very important to us, and it really shapes how we see policy and how we see the future of the state of Florida.
Yes, I think Casey said when Governor DeSantis comes home from a long day of working a 12-hour day and he walks through the door, he gets 3 kids handed to him very quickly. She's ready for a break, but she's doing the Cancer Connect Collaborative, so she's really doing some important work too. For Floridans. Well, listen, I've got probably time for 2 more questions. So real quick, I just want to talk about how you deal with the legacy media and the attacks, some of the lies that they portray, and how do you advance policy when it's confrontational like that sometimes? How do you work through that and get your message out?
Yeah, so what we do is I travel the state all the time. I do press conferences. Anyone can go, right? They can go. TV cameras there. They can report. They got to put my sound bites on so that people get to see it through the horse's mouth. And we just focus on delivering results and delivering the agenda. And I think what people have figured out is, the legacy media is very, very untrustworthy in the eyes of the public. I think there's like 20% that think they're trustworthy. That's a big change. Because I bet you, like my grandparents' generation, if it was on TV, if it was on the news, then that must be true, right? They believe that, and now I think people understand that it's all about furthering a partisan narrative. It's not necessarily about the facts, and so we have a cycle in Florida. I will do something, the left will have a spasm, the media will have a spasm. They'll try to do a narrative, and then like 2-4 weeks later, people say, "Oh, the governor was right." Because it's like, if they're not being honest about the facts, so I'll give you an example. We had a course that was proposed by the College Board, Advanced Placement for High School, Advanced Placement African American Studies. And we have standards, against indoctrination, CRT, all that. So our Department of Education looked at it. A lot of it was fine, but then they had stuff like queer theory. They had stuff like CRT, intersectionality. It was neo-Marxism that they were trying to impose on this school. So it didn't fit our standards. We rejected. Now, when you reject, you know what the media is going to do. They're going to call you names. They're going to demagogue you. They're going to do all that. And my view is Republicans got to stop worrying about being called names by the media and the left. Just do what's right, speak the truth, and you can cut through the BS. And that's just what we do. But it is important for Republicans to just understand. And look, we do stuff all the time. We have local stations. They're fine. But, you can tell a lot of these outlets, particularly legacy newspapers and stuff, they're partisan actors, basically. And it's fine. Most media in our history has been partisan. There was a Jeffersonian newspaper and a Hamiltonian newspaper when our republic was launched during the Washington administration, already going at each other. So but just understand that that's the contours. Don't think that they're coming to you in good faith. They're coming to you to be able to advance their agenda. And if you're somebody that's standing for our values, like Kim and me stand for, you are an impediment to their agenda. So they're not just trying to get the public more informed. They're trying to get you and use you to be able to advance that agenda. So don't play into it. Just speak the truth, do your thing, but do not give them the satisfaction that they are some type of neutral gatekeepers, because they are not.
Yep. Okay, final question. So in your book, The Courage to Be Free, you talk about growing up in Florida in a spring training town. In fact, you called it your own little baseball heaven. But you know where baseball heaven really is, right?
I know.
I think, is this heaven?
It's Iowa.
It's Iowa! Yay! Yay! Well, this guy, I don't think he strikes me as a don't rock the boat governor. So let's give him one last round of applause.
God bless
Thank you
you
all for being here. We appreciate it.